Excess deaths, sudden death syndrome. If this were real and not a conspiracy theory, surely we would have footage demonstrating that an alarming number of people just dropped down dead and collapsed out of nowhere. Oh, we do have that footage. Well, let's have a look at it. Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining us on our voyage to truth and freedom. It's a voyage where we will use many utensils and tools, such as video footage of people suddenly collapsing for no reason in sporting events, on the news. All of a sudden, we now know as a result of the release of insurance premium figures that excess deaths in America are beyond even the peak of the pandemic, even though the pandemic is over. We are aware now that in the first 9 months of 2023, I can't believe that this is true, but it is, that as many young Americans died as died in all the American wars from Vietnam to present day. And the only reason that we know this information is because insurance companies have reported on it. Let's have a look at a compilation of footage of people dropping dead, collapsing, falling over, often curiously and with hideous schadenfreude when talking about the efficacy of a certain little medication.
I don't mean to brag, but I want you to know, double vaxxed, booster, never got COVID, clearly, Jesus loves me the most. Seriously. So nice, so nice.
I still find that one pretty disturbing. Of course, we were all subject to an enormous propaganda campaign that was completely immersive, plainly coordinated, so it's no wonder that many people felt that they were making a moral and ethical choice by taking those medications. Indeed, that's the way that it was presented, in spite of a complete lack of clinical evidence that those medications were effective in stopping transmission. Quite the opposite, as a matter of fact.
Comedian Heather McDonald collapsed over the weekend during a show.
Management saying she suffered a skull fracture in the fall.
The CDC has confirmed
higher than normal cases
of heart inflammation in 16 to 24-year-olds.
Service members later developed myocarditis.
You take all of the vaccines since 2010 and you compare 2021, this thing blows through the roof.
Experts say more and more younger women are suffering from strokes.
Sorry, Airman, I'm not feeling very well right now.
80% of the cases have been in young boys.
One of the decisions that we were invited to make during this period was to sacrifice our own health and our own freedom in order to preserve the sanctity of life of other members of our community, in particular the vulnerable, which is a principle, of course, that anybody would support, which is why that principle was continually amplified. But now we are beginning to see that what played out is that young people were invited to make a sacrifice way beyond taking a medication to protect older people. It was a sacrifice that was going to literally impact them. Certainly the information around myocarditis and pericarditis suggests that, as well as new available information around sudden death syndrome and the excess deaths in the United States of America, as well as the over 1 million reported adverse events from taking the vaccines.
The 14-year-old's heart stopped.
A 15-year-old boy died
after receiving his first dose.
16-year-old was rushed to the hospital.
Loved ones say the 17-year-old's heart stopped.
The elite runner was rushed to the hospital after suffering a heart attack.
A high school football player has died.
I think we live in a culture now of technocracy. Technocracy is governance by experts. Of course, it has components of digital dictatorship. But the reason I want to focus on this experts component is, do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, or when you first saw people collapsing on sports fields, thinking, this seems a bit weird, this is not usual? And then the media reported, there's always been a number of sudden deaths. You saw that. You saw them trying to shut that down. You saw them try to frame it as potentially results of long COVID. You saw the incredible efforts that legacy media outfits went to mitigate, control, dampen down naturally emergent concern. I'm starting to think that our own common sense, our intuition and understanding is not as valuable as the information that could be granted by a NASA scientist when it comes to building a rocket, or an expert in agriculture when it comes to the cycles and expertise required to grow crops. But when it comes to a general understanding of reality, I think we are able to use common sense and intuition, personal understanding, communication between one another to establish narratives that seem perfectly plausible. For example, the idea that introducing a vaccine during a pandemic that couldn't possibly have been trialed for long-term effects because they hadn't had a long time to trial it all seemed pretty obvious to us. Increasingly, I'm noticing how common sense is being dismissed precisely because elites, as the word suggests, don't like ordinary people, see themselves as separate from ordinary people. In fact, you can't make any arguments for censorship and controlling hate speech without saying, first of all, we have an understanding of what should be communicated that you will never understand. That is already a step towards technocracy, dictatorship, an assumption that you are not in the role of an autonomous adult, you are in the role of a subject, a kind of servile child whose food has to be inspected and chewed before given to you. That is a dynamic that I reject, and I think increasingly we're right to reject that dynamic because so many things that we sort of collectively felt together have proven to be true over time. Hey, what if these measures are somehow beneficial to establishment interests and generate profits while enabling them to introduce regulation that controls the lives of ordinary people seemingly legitimately and for our own safety? What if that's what's behind this? Well, I suppose then you'd start seeing footage of people dropping dead on sports fields. Well, here is that footage.
Collapsing in the middle of the game.
Collapsing during the game.
Collapsing on the tennis court.
Suddenly collapsing.
The player collapsed
and
Died after collapsing.
He collapsed.
He collapsed.
He collapsed.
It seems that there's a second player who's collapsed.
This is unusual.
Never seen anything like this.
Yes.
Yeah, what's going on?
Sharp rise in unexplained deaths during the pandemic.
The number of deaths with unknown causes has gone up over the last 3 years.
Deaths that are not listed as COVID related.
I'm sorry, I'm feeling really dizzy.
Healthy young people are dying suddenly from a mysterious syndrome.
Sudden adult
Death syndrome.
SADS is an umbrella term to describe unexpected deaths in young people.
There is some evidence that some sort of delayed reaction to COVID.
Why would the legacy media not investigate this with the same vigour that they've applied to a variety of other subjects that appear to enhance their ability to control dissenting voices and shut down counter-narratives? Why is there a demand for censorship to be enshrined in law from the EU to Ireland to the United Kingdom to the United States of America to Canada? Why has it become so important to control information when the ability to create content like this has just become global and worldwide? It's precisely because information like this, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that all of those athletes died or that all of those athletes were suffering as a result of particular medications. But the data is available now. Excess deaths are rising. The life expectancy in the United States of America is falling, and it isn't because of COVID. Comparable figures are available in the United Kingdom, and once again, the same is true. Sudden deaths, unexpected deaths, excess deaths, all rising, and it isn't because of COVID. Curiously, there is a total lack of appetite to investigate this, even though it seems like there's ample evidence to warrant an investigation. Health agencies are not investigating it. Legacy media organisations are not investigating it. Elsewhere, we've reported on the kind of relationships that exist between big pharma and cable news media, who receive the vast majority of their funding, not only from big pharma, but specifically from Pfizer, just one organisation. Have you ever seen Albert Bourla contend with a single difficult question, except for when he was chased by rebel news through the snowy streets of Davos? Of course you haven't. You've just seen him in puff piece after puff piece. Independent media is vital because it allows these questions to be asked. Were it not for the valuable voices in this space, you wouldn't have a COVID inquiry in the UK. You wouldn't have any dissent at all. You wouldn't have no uptake for the latest COVID booster shots because none of this information would be available. I'm not saying that just because I am an independent media figure, even though I personally know the level of attacks that are likely if you put yourself in a position of dissent. I know it. I know it personally. I'm just one voice in an increasingly powerful space. But the real power is with you, your independent thought, your ability to choose. That's what they are trying to shut down and control. They do not want an awakened dissenting population investigating the high levels of corruption in their own state, in their own media, and in particular in globalist, corporatist agencies and financial entities. Because if people become aware to that, we will oppose it. They won't be able to control and regulate a population that is mistrustful of its media, its judiciary, its law enforcement agencies, and in particular the establishment interests that appear to be able to coordinate all of them. You've just seen with your own eyes sufficient evidence to warrant a serious investigation into the impact of the pandemic era, distinct and separate from the impact of COVID itself, whether that's as a result of the rise of heart disease, or people taking their own lives, or mental health, or the collapse of small businesses, or the impact on children's education, and certainly, and perhaps most importantly, the possible impact of certain medical interventions that were highly propagandized, the message of which was amplified, questions weren't asked, dissent was shut down, legitimate experts were shamed and smeared and shut down, and dissenting voices were attacked. This is time for a global reckoning. Let's ensure that 2024 isn't like 2023, a year where ordinary people's views were repressed so that establishment power could be continually magnified. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the chat? Remember, we stream from this date at these times. You will love our content. We're coming back with some fantastic guests and some fantastic, powerful stories. In the meantime, if you can, stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.